The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
So Mika's going to speak for about 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to engage in conversation with questions and whatnot. So I'd like to invite Doreen to come forward, please, and introduce Mika. Thank you.
It's such an honor and blessing to be here. This is our, I think, third time here, and my husband and I love being here, listening to Pastor John and being with you all, and really admire and I just really cherish all the ministries you do. And I'm very proud today to introduce Mika for you. Mika is the director of engagement and education at Border Servant Corps in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Now, I think it was a few years ago, we, 14 of us from the New England Synod, went on a border immersion trip at Cristo Rey Lutheran Church in El Paso, Texas. It was a wonderful, transformative experience. And one of the activities we did there was we went to Border Servant Corps in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So we saw some of the work that they do. I have since been working a lot with Mika, first of all over the phone and also through Zoom, because our church has sponsored an asylum-seeking family from Ecuador that we got through Mika and Border Servant Corps. So then when we had a workshop welcoming congregations at the Synod, New England Synod Assembly just yesterday at 8:30 in the morning, I invited Mika to come up, and she spoke at that in addition to other people that spoke who were sponsoring asylum-seeking families and do other things. So now I'm very happy to present to you in person, Mika.
Thank you so much, Doreen. And thank you all again so much for allowing me to come and speak to you today. It's been a huge honor to get to come and see your community and spend a little bit of time with you. And this is my first time in New England, and I've been absolutely enamored. So thank you for the welcome. Okay, so I'd like to start by sharing a little bit about who Border Servant Corps is as an organization, to provide you with a little bit of context about some of the different opportunities for engagement, particularly congregational sponsorship, that I'll be chatting about in a moment. So Border Servant Corps started in 1997 as a ministry of Peace Lutheran Church, which is an ELCA church in the Rocky Mountain Synod. We're located in Las Cruces, New Mexico. That's the state that's sandwiched between Arizona and Texas, so right down by the border down in the south. And for many years, Border Servant Corps was a really small ministry that spent a lot of time focusing on relationships. So we had a year-long volunteer program, so AmeriCorps style program, that allowed young folks from elsewhere in the United States to come and spend a year in service, placed at different agencies or different churches and organizations in the borderlands. And I think that history and all of those years building relationships with folks in the borderlands has really helped us to transition well into the ministry that we do now, which is twofold. First, our older program is our border immersion program, so similar to the immersion program that Iglesia Luterana Cristo Rey, so Lutheran Church of Christ the King in El Paso runs, that Ms. Doreen was on. Border Servant Corps also has an immersion program, And we'd like to extend an open invitation to anyone from this community who would like to come down and visit us and let us feed you a lot of great local food and introduce you to a lot of cool people down there, so that we can allow the border communities to tell you their own story. And that way you don't have to rely on stories told about them. And then our second program is what I'll spend a bit more time talking about this morning. We are part of a mostly faith-based network of border shelters along the US-Mexico border. And we provide short-term, sort of transitionary hospitality for asylum seekers and asylum-seeking families that are coming to the United States. So we function as kind of a soft community landing for them, and a warm face and a big hug and a welcome when they're released from either processing with Border Patrol or detention with Immigration and Customs Enforcement with ICE. So the way our folks usually get into our hands is that they have traveled from other parts of the world. Many times folks are coming from South and Central America, but definitely not exclusively. We do receive folks from all over the world. They have made their way up South and Central America, often by foot, or by train, or by piecing together, catching rides, and in many cases have been on the road for weeks, if not months, to get to the US southern border. And when they get there, they turn themselves in either to customs at a port of entry or to Border Patrol between ports of entry, and essentially say, I need help. I'm here to seek asylum. I can't go back to my home country for these reasons. I'm afraid and I need help. And that kickstarts a process where they are given an opportunity to sit down with someone in immigration and tell their story. And that conversation is known as a credible fear interview. And it's essentially an opportunity for the immigration official to determine whether the fear that this individual claims of returning to their home country is credible. If it's determined that they do have a credible fear, then normally they are allowed to enter the United States and put together their case, which they will ultimately present to an immigration judge, and then receive the determination of whether they're granted asylum in the United States or not. So where we come into the process is, rather than releasing these asylum-seeking individuals directly to the streets or to a bus station after they're finished processing them and checking, they'll do, the Border Patrol and Customs will do fingerprints, they'll take their fingerprints, they'll do an iris scan, they'll check all of that against FBI and CIA databases, they'll check it against Interpol. So by the time folks are released into the US, they've been thoroughly vetted. And we come into the picture as a place for these individuals to go in between Border Patrol processing and getting to whoever is going to receive them in the US while they put together their case for asylum. So our guests, as we refer to the folks that we are fortunate enough to serve, will arrive at our shelter in these big white ICE buses, and watching folks come off the bus and be told that they're no longer in detention and that they are free and that we're going to help them out for a couple days is truly one of the greatest privileges of this work, to get to be there for that moment. And so during those few days that we have our guests in our care, We provide them with medical care if they need it, change of clothes, showers, food, toys for the little ones, a safe place to sleep, and most importantly, we help them figure out what their next step is going to be. Most people who are coming to the United States to seek asylum or for any other reason, we find that they're coming with a connection already here, so they have someone who is going to receive them when they arrive in this country. They have a sister in Massachusetts that's willing to take them in. Their husband's aunt, lives in California, and so they're going to go stay with her. And then there are folks who perhaps were not able to come with a plan, or their sponsor falls through, and that is where our network comes in. So I'm here to invite our Lutheran family in the New England Synod to consider opening their doors and receiving an asylum-seeking family, and providing hospitality, right? So love and care and wraparound services until that family is able to stand on their own feet. A little bit about the folks that we're receiving and some of the current federal policies that are shaping who is showing up at our doors. Again, to provide y'all with more context about who might potentially be showing up at your door if you decide to partner with us on this. Right now, or at least in May, which is the last time we did the counts, we have been receiving mostly folks from Colombia, Guatemala, Brazil, and I believe it was Turkey. So folks from all over the world, a variety of different languages, which makes our work a lot of fun and a huge privilege, right? To get to meet people who've lived in different places and are coming with such compelling stories. About 50% of the guests that we receive are children, particularly school-aged kiddos. So often the kids who are too young to leave behind with other family members in their home country are the little ones that the families will bring with them. And there are a couple of federal policies that are also working to shape the numbers of people that we're receiving at our shelter, and some of the demographics as well. So after the lifting of the COVID era Title 42 public health order back in mid-May, everyone kind of collectively expected that we were going to receive a significant surge of individuals both coming to the southern border and being allowed to seek asylum within the United States. And those of us on the board were really excited to be able to welcome so many people, particularly from countries that had been asked to wait on the Mexican side of the border for years, often in very dangerous situations. But that did not happen. There have been other federal policies that were put into place that have resulted in much lower numbers than we had expected. So one of these policies is that now anyone who is approaching the border to request asylum is required to have already an appointment set up with immigration, and to have done that through a phone application called the CBP One app, so Customs and Border Protection One app. And just like with many of the apps that we have on our phones, right? It doesn't always work. It can be kind of glitchy. Finding reliable Wi-Fi or cell service can also be pretty challenging. And so this has introduced more challenges for folks who are coming to try to seek asylum. If someone approaches the border without already having an appointment through the CBP One app, they are required to meet a higher criteria of danger. So instead of having a credible fear, there's something that's a step above that's known as a reasonable fear. And we don't have to get into specifics of what that looks like right now, but suffice to say that if someone approaches the border without already an appointment through the CBP One app, and without being able to meet this higher and very stringent criteria of being able to prove that they have a reasonable fear of returning to their home country and therefore that they need to come into the US, they are, if they have neither of those, they are being deported under Title VIII. So we have gone back to the pre-Title 42 federal immigration policies, where most people are deported to their countries of origin under Title VIII. So deportations are up significantly, and the number of people, asylum seekers being allowed to enter the United States is down. So as sad as that makes us in those of us involved in Borderlands humanitarian response, the silver lining is that it does give us a bit of time to focus, to turn some of our attention inward into the United States and towards our faith family in the United States, and invite congregations to consider opening their doors to receive a family. So I have some handouts that I'll pass out in just a moment so we can kind of walk through this together, to give you just a bit of a sense of what this process might look like, and what might be asked of y'all if you decide to partner with us in this. So the first steps in preparing to receive an asylum-seeking family or individual is really to identify a team to be in charge of this. The congregations that we've worked with in the past have all, unanimously said that this kind of work, this hospitality, this reception, this accompaniment is something that is much more effective when done in community. And so one of the first steps would be to identify a team who's going to be kind of taking the lead on these efforts. Another pre-step is having a reception plan ready. So having a sense of when the need arises, where would this family be housed? Are there some funds set aside to get them started? Talking through some of the different contingency plans of transportation, and then identifying community resources, so that way, when you get the call from us, there's something already in place, and that it isn't as much of an initial lift. And then finally, making sure that whoever the sending organization is, in our case, it would be Border Servant Corps, and you would likely be getting the call from me, making sure that we've got updated contact information and that we know what your turnaround time is, if there are certain nationalities or languages or demographics that your community is better set up to receive, so that way, if we come across a family in our care that doesn't have the funds to move onward, that doesn't have anyone to receive them in the United States, and that likely for demographic reasons, for whom it would be too risky to be sent to a shelter for the unhoused, or to a women's shelter, or to simply be allowed to go to New York to figure it out, right? So often we're thinking mamas with very young kiddos, families with special circumstances, folks who need a little extra love and TLC. So that way when we identify a family that meets all these criteria, then we'll know that y'all are the ones to call. And then once we have identified a family for you, the next step would be actually receiving this individual or family. We are in the process of this week. Yesterday, I just had a Zoom meeting with a ELCA church up in Pittsburgh that is going to be receiving a father and a son from our shelter. So the process that we found through trial and error that seems to work relatively well is we would first give y'all a call and say, okay, this is who we've got, this is their situation, is now a good time, how do you feel? And then if the congregation decides to move forward, we would set up a video chat call or a Zoom meeting so that you get to meet this family that might be coming your way and get a sense of what we might be getting into. And so that the family can also see that there is someone on the other end to receive them. In many cases, as I mentioned, these families have been traveling for weeks or months. They have, in many cases, been extorted along the way. They have had many of their possessions taken from them. They have encountered a great deal of cruelty and unkindness from a lot of different people along the way, including the cartels at different stages along their journey. And so to know and to be able to see on a screen the faces of the people that are going to be receiving them and the faces of the people that are going to be their adopted family for a little while can be incredibly powerful and really does help to calm those fears and calm those anxieties and kind of let people start to unwind a little bit. And then if after the Zoom meeting, both sides still feel good about moving forward, then we would work with the congregation to purchase tickets for the family. Since y'all are so far away, it would likely be plane tickets to make sure that we can get them to you, and we would provide them with transportation to the airport and all of the things that they would need for the journey. And then they would arrive, and that would be the handoff, and then the real work begins. No? So what a congregation would be committing to by accepting an asylum-seeking family would be to provide wraparound support and services until that family is able to start to take care of some of those pieces themselves. So this would likely be a 1 year plus commitment, depending on the individual family circumstances. And this would include making sure that the family has somewhere to live, that they have housing, that they have a place to stay, that they have the essentials, so food, and clothing, and toiletries, until they're able to apply for and receive their work permit, and then start working and providing a lot of these things for themselves. Connecting this family or this unit to a variety of different social services, transportation, medical care, mental health care, enrolling the kiddos in school if there are school-age children, linking them up with community organizations that can provide other supports, plugging them into a social network to get them established. And the reason that it is that we reach out to congregations and communities for these kinds of things is because in the United States, asylum seekers are not able to access many of the services that are available for refugees. So, US law makes a distinction between a refugee who has applied for refugee status outside of their home country in a United Nations refugee camp and has then been assigned the United States as their new host country. So by the time they come with that stamp of approval from the United Nations. And for folks in that position, there are some services available, and there is an organization that will provide a lot of this wraparound care for them when they arrive. For asylum seekers, they don't come with that United Nations stamp of approval. In most cases, they don't come with a visa. And approaching the border, or in some cases an airport, which is also considered a port of entry, approaching the border is the very very first interaction with the US immigration system. And for them, there are very, very few services available. So the great burden of living falls entirely on themselves and on whoever's going to receive them, which is why we turn to our faith family. The final big important piece that a congregation would be committing to when accepting an asylum-seeking family would be to find them an immigration lawyer. This is, again, right, a critical piece in providing effective care for this family. An immigration lawyer is going to be really, really helpful in helping the family to apply for a work permit so that they can work, in ultimately, pulling together their asylum case and presenting it to an immigration judge. And according to the American Civil Liberties Union, if an asylum seeker has an immigration lawyer, they are 10 times more likely to win their asylum case, which is a big deal because nationwide, only about 30% on average of asylum cases are granted. And that can vary pretty significantly depending on the immigration judge and depending on what region of the United States the person's case is assigned. So an immigration lawyer is a pretty critical piece of this. And then finally, if this is something that your congregation is discerning and is potentially interested in moving forward with, we do just want to note that we live in an imperfect world and we're working within an imperfect immigration system. And just as we cannot guarantee a happy ending to any of our guests, we cannot guarantee a happy ending to any of our partners. So the folks that you would be receiving are functioning within a system that in many cases has been stacked against them. And there are going to be pressures and forces on them outside of their own control. And so that is a piece that we encourage congregations to think about, that as Pastor John said earlier, this is a bit of a reckless love. It is radical hospitality, with no guarantee that things will be picture perfect, and absolutely no guarantee that it's going to be easy, or that there are going to be ready answers to any questions, or that any of the challenges that the family faces while they're here with you are going to be easily solved. But we believe that at Border Servant Corps, we believe that it is this challenge and it is this risk that makes this love so powerful and that makes this ministry so needed. And so we humbly invite y'all to partner with us in this and join with us in this and discern if this might be something that you might be feeling called to do. Thank you. So I understand that we do have some time for questions, right? Yes, sir, absolutely.
The person from Turkey who's across the border in Mexico, they don't quite understand that from like geography.
Sure. So we have received folks from over 55 countries, which is pretty cool. And for the individuals that are coming from further away than kind of, South American landmass, right? In many cases, they are flying into places like Brazil, and then where either there are not visa requirements or it's much cheaper to get a visa, and then they are making their way up through South and Central America, because getting a visa directly into the United States or even directly into Mexico is very challenging and very expensive. So most folks find that although the journey is more arduous and significantly more dangerous, it is often one of the only options available to them to come into South America and then work their way up.
Say again why they did it. Is it more money? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
More money than faster? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. Because trying to get a visa directly, to be able to come directly into the United States is often very expensive, and the wait time can be very, very long. And if someone finds themselves in a situation where their life is in danger or they're facing immediate persecution, they don't have the time or the resources, to try to get a visa into the US or even sometimes into Mexico, depending on where they're coming from. So people take this really tricky, roundabout, dangerous journey as a workaround. Thank you. We are definitely not the only organization that does this. We are the largest, or the shelter with the largest capacity in what's known as the El Paso sector of the U.S.-Mexico borderlands. So that includes all of the state of New Mexico and then some of West Texas. So we belong to a network of mostly churches that were known as the Annunciation House Border Shelter Network. And the main shelter in that network is Annunciation House. They are based in El Paso, Texas. And so the reason that we all joined together is so that way, logistically, it would be a little bit simpler and we could speak to Border Patrol and to ICE and the Department of Homeland Security with one voice through Annunciation House. So in the Annunciation House Border Network, we are the ones with the greatest capacity. So we have room to receive about 250 people a day. Right now, we're definitely not anywhere near capacity. We're getting about 20 to 60 people a day. But there are other organizations throughout the borderlands. Again, many of them are faith-based. That do reception work similar to what we do. Our models are all a little bit different. Thank you. Yes.
If they're deported, Do they have any chance of returning?
If they receive a no on their asylum application, my understanding is that folks are allowed to appeal once. And if they still receive a no, then they are deported back to their home country. And I will say I'm not a lawyer, so if you talk to an immigration lawyer, they'll probably be able to give you a much more nuanced answer. But my understanding is that they are not allowed to come back to the United States as asylum seekers unless their circumstances change significantly. Yes, ma'am.
Are they more likely to be able to stay if they have family in the United States?
Yes and no. Sorry, let me break this down a little bit. So for asylum seekers, and again, I'm not an immigration lawyer, so with that, please take what I say with a grain of salt. But my understanding is that for asylum seekers, having family in the United States does not directly affect their asylum application. It doesn't directly affect their claim, because what they have to prove is that they are facing persecution or risk of life in their home country because of one of a very strict set of criteria. So it has to be that they're facing persecution. I'm probably going to get these wrong. So if anyone in the room who has a better grasp on this, please correct me. They have to be facing persecution because of their religion, their ethnicity, their political opinion, their membership in a particular social group, which these days often means being part of the LGBTQ plus community, and living in a country where that places them in significant danger, or
Race and nationality.
okay, there we go. So race and nationality are the other two. I think ethnicity may not be one. So this does not include gender. This does not include not being able to feed your family. And so this is why having an immigration lawyer is so critical, because folks have to prove that their lived experiences fit into one of these very specific categories. And that can be incredibly challenging to do without an immigration lawyer. But I will say that having, perhaps not family, but having someone to receive them in the United States, and especially someone to receive them who can connect them with all of the resources that they need, that can have a significant impact on their asylum case and on their experience here in the United States. So being received by a congregation, by a whole community, they're much more likely to have access to someone who can teach them English, to someone who can find them an immigration lawyer, to someone who can enroll their kids in school, to someone who can drive them around, for the first few months until something else is sorted. And having that support network can play a huge role in determining ultimately whether they have the resources and are able to put together a strong enough case to be allowed to stay or not. And so that's my yes and no answer. So not formally, not directly as part of the application, but indirectly in setting them up for success.
Do you have enough experience to put like a rough number on this, like what the success rate is for families you have chosen to partners, as far as getting asylum?
Unfortunately, I do not. And that's partly because I've only been with Border Servant Corps for about 2 years, And we have placed 7, 8, I think about 8 families with ELCA congregations at this point, and that's happened in the last year. And asylum cases can take multiple years because the backlog is so large. And so for all of the families that we have placed with congregations, I just haven't been around long enough to watch that all play out. Yes, ma'am.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
So from my experience in working with asylum seekers, and I'm saying this as the chairperson of the Refugee Immigration Ministry RIM cluster of Chelmsford, Lowell. So we've had, oh jeepers, there's other people too. Okay, so I'm trying to think here. So we've had, I don't know if I can say their names. I think it's okay to say their names, maybe not. So we have had 2 people from the Congo, 1 person from Ethiopia, 1 person from Senegal.
Family from Uganda.
Yes, and a person, 2 people from Guatemala. So that's 7. Person from Ethiopia, person from Senegal, person from Guatemala. They all have received asylum status, and they're, some of them may be working on their naturalization too by now. It's a long process. One of our clients from Guatemala, I think her application was filed in, I think it might have been 2015, and she hasn't had her hearing yet. It unfortunately takes a long time generally. However, our last person that we had came, 18 months ago, and she just had her hearing, and she was accepted by the United States. So, it really depends.
thank you. We have time for just 1 or 2 more questions. Any other questions?
So, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Anyone that a congregation is able to house a family or a person, or they pay rent somewhere for an apartment for the family?
Thank you. We've seen a variety of different models. So the congregation in Pittsburgh that we're working with right now, they have found that in their case, it's worked better to place the family in a series of long-term stay hotels until they're able to get the money together to rent them an apartment. In some cases, so for example, in southeastern Minnesota, we placed a family with a congregation where a gentleman had a floor of his house that he wasn't using. I think he had a fully finished basement with, a little kitchenette and a bathroom. And so that was made available for the family. And then we've had other congregations where the church might have a property that isn't being used, and that might be a great place for the family to stay in. So we've seen a variety of different models, and it kind of depends on what makes most sense for that individual congregation and the housing situation and the surrounding community.
All right, I'd like to, let's all give her a round of applause.
Welcome to Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. It is Sunday, June 11th, 2023. I'm Priscilla, Almquist-Olsen, your host for this interview, but Holy Trinity Lutheran has been the host for the introduction to a ministry about to those refugees at the border of our country, and here to represent one of the faith-based organizations providing services to refugees is Mica de la Rosa. And Mica, welcome, and thank you so much for a wonderful presentation that we heard today and that our viewers will be seeing after our little interview here. So tell me about your organization.
Thank you so much. Yes, so I represent an organization called Border Servant Corps, and we started as a ministry of Peace Lutheran Church in Las Cruces, New Mexico, so down there by the southern border, sandwiched between Arizona and Texas. And we started as a ministry in 1997, so we've been around for a little while, doing a variety of different things, but always with a focus on relational service and hospitality and just a lot of love. So right now we have two programs that we run. The first, the smaller, the older program is our border immersion program, and that provides us an opportunity to bring folks down from the interior of the US and introduce them to the border. In Spanish, we would say to give them a chance to conocer la frontera, to literally meet the borderlands in everything that they are. So gives us a chance to show off our local cooking, introduce groups to individuals and voices that they probably otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to hear from, and allow border communities to tell their own story. So that's our first older program, and most of our time and our brain space now is engaged in hospitality, in sheltering. So we run a short-term, high-volume kind of transitionary shelter for asylum seekers that have come to the US-Mexico border, have been processed, thoroughly vetted, and then released by either Border Patrol or ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, with the Department of Homeland Security. So after they have been vetted and before they are expected to check in at an ICE location and put together their case for asylum and present their case to a judge, they're brought to us. So we get to be the first faces that our guests meet in a non-detention setting, and we take this privilege very seriously. So we'll love on our guests for about 48 hours usually. So it's a just very brief time to give us a chance for them to take a shower and have a warm meal and a safe place to sleep, access medical care. And most importantly, we connect them with whoever's going to be receiving them in the United States, or whatever their next step is going to be while they put together their case for asylum before they're able to present it to a judge.
Okay, well, that is a wonderful ministry, and you are an integral part of that, and you're going to be explaining that today at the adult forum that'll follow our interview. So, and you're going to be presenting the objectives and mission of your ministry in detail. And one of the things that I understand is that you are looking for congregations and individuals to sponsor some individuals or families, and you do this by connecting them via Zooms, so that both the family and the individual of the congregation can decide if it's a good fit. So, and I'm sure there are ways of supporting financially. I'm sure you have donors who supply money to your organization to keep it going. All right, Now, tell me, how did you get involved in this ministry? Was Tell me a little bit about your childhood and growing up. Did it have any impact on the journey that you're now on?
Absolutely. So I am a child of immigrants, and sometimes I'll tell our guests that I am where their children and their grandchildren will be. My father is from the Dominican Republic, and he came to the U.S. when he was 7. His parents fled, and then sent for him. And my mother's family is from northern Mexico, so Chihuahua. Um, and my grandfather, my mom's dad, came as a bracero with the bracero program for farm laborers, agricultural laborers. And so growing up, the issue of migration and of movement, and of what drives people to leave everything they know and to go to a place that they feel will be safer, or that they feel will give their children better opportunities. That was dinner table conversations, and so that definitely has influenced what I feel called to do, and the approach that I try to bring to this work. And I spent most of my youth running away from immigration work because I was firmly convinced that my Spanish wasn't good enough, and that I wasn't tough enough or strong enough to represent these people, because I thought they deserve someone better than I to fight for them. And it wasn't until the last few years that I started to see that maybe it's okay that my Spanish isn't perfect, and maybe it's okay that I'm not the smartest or toughest person to be fighting on their behalf, but
That is not true.
oh,
She is extraordinarily intelligent, articulate, and you're going to see that when you hear her presentation following this interview.
oh, okay. Thank you so much. But sometimes, even it is the flawed tools that are used, right? That's what God uses to build His church, and what He uses to serve His people. And yes, and so for me, it's been a bit of a journey, getting to this work, and it's been a beautiful learning experience. It's an incredible privilege, an incredible honor to serve the folks that we do.
Wow, wonderful. And what is your vision for the future?
Oh, I would say that my vision and my hope and my very fervent prayer is that we as a country and we as faith communities are able to live up to our potential to love, because we have so much to give, and we can be so much better than we're being. And I think if we're able to really tap into that potential for radical hospitality and a sort of a reckless, a Christ-like love, it really will make the world a much better place.
It certainly will. And you being a part of that, you have already made it a better place. So we thank you so much for your service, and thank you for your wonderful presentation that you're going to make today. Not only is it going to be informative and engaging, but it's going to be inspiring. It's going to inspire people to get involved as individuals, as congregations, and I hope those of you who are viewing this presentation today will really listen to Mika and her challenge to everybody out there to make this a better world, to the potential of love, as she calls it, to embrace our brothers and sisters in need who are coming as refugees from all parts of the world, not just from South America, but from Africa, from Turkey, and in the Middle East, in Asian countries as well. So thank you so much, Mica de la Rosa, for being our guest today and inspiring us to participate in this wonderful ministry that you are a central part of. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
And to all of you out there, thank you for joining us. I hope that you will benefit and that your heart will be open to participating in this wonderful enterprise. Thank you for joining.